Come on in. Come on over, son. Yeah, come on in. Well, thank you again for being here, and once again, as we're all united, saying good afternoon. As you know, we are definitely prepared for hurricane season. I've just finished my complete mayoral briefing with all of our partners assembled here, as well as those that just remain in unified command in terms of collaborating partners with the city of New Orleans. You know, as a low-lying city and on the front lines of climate change, no city knows the importance of hurricane preparedness more than the city of New Orleans. We are prepared, no doubt about that. But I will say that although experts anticipate a normal hurricane season, it only takes one storm to make it an active season. And a key lesson learned, again, from Hurricane Katrina is that risk is inherent and cannot be eliminated. But what we've also learned, even from Hurricane Ida, and just in terms of ways that we can improve, and we have embedded those improvements into our emergency plans for hurricane season 2023. Just lessons learned, whether it's implementing NORD-C, officially a part of our hurricane preparedness or emergency preparedness actions after and post-storm, as well as pre. In addition to that, I'm going to ask Director Colin Arnold to just walk us through ways that we are prepared. You're going to hear from other directors as well as partners. We will come back, go to Q&A, but I tell you, I've listened to over 55 departments as well as partners, and we are prepared. So with that, Colin, please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right.
Afternoon, everybody. I'd like to start by thanking all the partners that are standing here, and as the mayor mentioned, we took a briefing this morning of over 55 local, state, and federal agencies, all involved and all stakeholders in responding to, preparing for, responding to, and recovering from a potential tropical event or a hurricane. I think the relationships we have with our local, state, regional, and federal partners are the most important way that we can ensure that we are prepared. We have to plan, as we do every year, for rapidly intensifying storms, which I think Lauren will talk about a little after me, but without belaboring the point. Although we have El Nino, which can cause an effect that prevents maybe some of the Atlantic activity that we see. The seawater temperatures in the Gulf are very high, and that doesn't really have anything to do with what can form in the Gulf of Mexico off the Yucatan Peninsula and the Caribbean and affect us as a city. So we need to be prepared. And I think that the briefing this morning accentuates that we are synchronizing and we're coordinating with our partners more than we have ever before. The Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness remains committed to coordinating the city's response should a storm come our way. Some of the things we've done in an after action, both from Ida, we had a relatively quiet season last year, fortunately. We have, at the end of last year, hired a disaster accessibility coordinator in my office, which is a full-time position, to expand language access and functional needs access in our messaging and our emergency plans and operations. We've continued to build on our emergency resource center concept and plans that were utilized to great effect during Hurricane Ida. Well suited for both tornadoes and freeze incidents that we saw last year as well. Participation and support from our partners at NORD-C and RTA, SPCA in particular, those three are just terrific. I mean, I really just cannot say enough about these organizations. We finalized the city's comprehensive recovery framework in December of 2022. Recently, which actually has been asked by FEMA to be presented as a model of practice for how large-scale recovery planning and framework should occur. Had a lot of community engagement in that process, which we're very proud of. We hosted a regional roundtable for the media and all of our Region 1 partners, Jefferson, Orleans, St. Bernard, and Plaquemines Parish at WYES. And in the first quarter of this year, it was tremendously successful. Our idea was to get media together really just to talk about mass notification and how we alert the public and message the public. And I think that's something we want to build into doing a quarterly meeting with our media partners in that regard, which we're happy about. We, through NOLA Ready, we've began developing a standard operating procedure post-event called a post-emergency canvas operation, which was activated for the Algiers tornado for the first time. Now it's a smaller scale event with less effect than what we'd expect from a major hurricane, but it does kind of show the need for disaster case management when we're working with many of the communities in our city. We've launched a Spanish emergency alert list. I'm encouraging anyone who knows of a Spanish speaker, native Spanish speaker, someone who prefers to converse in Spanish, please text ESP to 77295. We'll send you alerts in Spanish. Hurricane preparedness presentations are underway. NOSEP has been focused on independent living facilities with the health department and RTA, and you're going to hear more about that from those speakers. If you have anyone in the community, and we want to talk to anybody face-to-face, especially post-COVID, that would like any type of hurricane preparedness presentation or active shooter preparedness, we have a whole list of kind of classes and presentations that we can do. Please go to ready.nola.gov/training. We're encouraging all residents to get there and review their hurricane plans now. This is the time to do it. Stay connected by signing up for NOLA Ready emergency alerts by texting NOLA Ready, one word, that's NOLA Ready to 77295. Make an evacuation plan for your family that includes any special needs, any functional or access needs, any care for elderly members of the family, and your pets. Gather your supplies for an emergency home kit for a lower level storm where we're going to shelter in place, and always have a go bag ready in case we do need to evacuate. Review your flood insurance policy and make sure you're covered this season. We all know that that's a hot button issue right now. For more information about all of these things I'm talking about, go to ready.nola.gov. You can also follow us on social media at NOLA Ready. While New Orleans is better prepared for a hurricane than it has ever been, we cannot be complacent. New Orleanians must continue to come together. In this profession, in emergency management, we're always concerned about the potential for complacency among our residents, especially with, what we're hearing about this year's forecast being either normal or slightly below average. This hurricane season will be no different than any other hurricane season, and we are in a unique position and in a unique geography for a unique threat from a hurricane, and that continues to be the same regardless of the forecast. Please get to know your neighbors. We're learning a lot about independent living facilities, the elderly, and those that will be most affected particularly by heat and power outages after storms. We've learned it during Ida, and we're doing what we can, and it's a challenge to bring these people that need our assistance and prioritize them, and that's what we're trying to do. Please get to know your neighbors, talk to them about their plans. Join the NOLA Ready Volunteer Corps if you have some time and are interested in assisting your fellow residents and visitors with hurricane preparedness. We're always looking for volunteers. Please take care of each other and this great city. Thanks. And so Lauren Nash is going to come up. She's the warning coordination meteorologist for the New Orleans Office of the National Weather Service and a terrific partner.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, has released their 2023 hurricane season outlook, which does call for a near normal hurricane season. This forecast is based on a high chance of El Nino, as some of you may have heard that term recently, which does suppress hurricane activity in the Atlantic. However, sea surface temperatures are also at record highs, which can increase hurricane season activity. This has led to the near normal forecast. Now, as Colin was saying, a lot of times El Nino has very little sway in the Gulf of Mexico or these storms that form in the Caribbean or near the Yucatan. Those may not be impacted by El Nino. And also remember, this forecast is a huge basin. So Canada to the UK, down to Africa, down to South America for the entire season. This is not a New Orleans specific forecast, and we cannot tell you how many storms will impact the region. That means it's important to be ready for hurricane season now. It's important to be ready for a tropical system before it happens, because you don't know how much time you're going to have. We saw with Ida, we've seen with other storms and rapid intensification, people aren't going to get the 5 to 7 days that they're thinking they're going to have. So be ready now. Lastly, remember to follow trusted weather sources. This means the National Weather Service, your local news outlets, and of course the City of New Orleans. And like every year, we at the National Weather Service stand ready to work closely with the City of New Orleans and provide them all the information that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, and you do a great job, and thank you for that. Dr. Jennifer Vegno, New Orleans Health Department.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hi, everybody. I'm here to talk specifically about the independent living facilities, because this is something new and it's directly based on the lessons learned from Ida, and those were very hard lessons. What we learned is that these independent living facilities are especially vulnerable to the impacts of hurricanes, whether it's power outages, flooding, or isolation. And so that's why we have some sort of new guidelines to assist these facilities with their emergency preparedness. The health department during emergencies generally has a few main roles and then has some supporting roles, but our main roles are to coordinate with independent living facilities and then to work with NOSEP and the state to help coordinate nursing homes. And I want to make it clear these are two different categories. We also assist with the new Smart 911 registry, and then we coordinate across healthcare facilities, hospitals, home health, dialysis, et cetera. So just to be clear, when we say independent living facilities, what we're talking about are privately owned buildings where many seniors and individuals with disabilities may live. They do not provide advanced levels of care like a nursing home or an assisted living facilities, but I don't need to tell anybody who was here during Ida, there are many independent but yet still vulnerable residents who live in these types of buildings. So what the ordinance that was passed shortly thereafter does is improves our ability to communicate with and understand the immediate challenges for people with special needs or functional needs who live in these large facilities, and allow us to triage any emergent aid much more efficiently than we saw a few years ago. What the ordinance asks buildings to do is a few things. Number one, to provide an updated roster of residents to the health department so we know how many people are there and who they are. Residents are also encouraged, but not mandated, to provide details about any special needs they might have. So when we get that roster, we've asked residents, if you have oxygen, if you have a wheelchair, if you're electricity dependent, please let us know so that we can account for that. Facilities also have to provide the name and multiple points of contact for the responsible individual for that building who would remain on site during most disasters, and they must check in with NOHD every 24 hours during a disaster. This is similar to what we do with nursing homes, and it works really, really well, because then we know within a 24-hour period, if not more frequently, exactly if there's something going on. Each facility must submit their emergency plan, but I want to make it clear that unlike nursing homes, there is no set standard of a building plan. Think about, you might have a different plan for your house than your neighbor has for their house, and that's very similar, recognizing these are privately owned buildings. There is no approval process of the plan. We just want to know exactly what it is so that we can reference it should we need to. So we've been coordinating since the ordinance passed with facility management and staff to make sure they have adequate supplies and bad weather plans. We are conducting inspections, assessments. We will work with anybody on their plan or to help it be as robust as it can. Where we are now is that, according to the conditions set forth in the ordinance, there are 67 facilities that meet this criteria, right? It's not going to be every apartment building in New Orleans. It's a very specific set of criteria. Of those, 55 have submitted their application. 44 are in full compliance, which is pretty good. The ones who aren't quite yet in compliance, we are working with to make sure that they are. That leaves 12 who have not submitted applications, but we are in contact with and working with everyone so that we can get them up to speed. This application is due on June 1st, and there is an adjudication process if you don't submit. But we really want to thank our partners who manage these buildings because by and large, they've been very, very responsive, wanting to work on it. We've done a ton of outreach at the buildings with the residents, with the management. So, we're going to continue to work with them. But I do want to say, if you're a resident at an independent living facility, or if you have a family member or a loved one who is in one of these facilities, please make sure you have your own plan set. This is not a substitution for your own personal plan or that of your vulnerable family members. I can't stress this enough. You should understand what your building is presenting to us. You should have that conversation with them, but it's really important to make your own plans. Being prepared individually to decide whether you're going to stay or evacuate is always the best and safest course. So again, we encourage all of these residents and everybody to review your emergency plan, to sign up for NOLA Ready Alerts at ready.nola.gov, and the Health Department is also here to reach out. Any questions, we're here to help. We want to make sure that everyone's ready for hurricane season. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vegno. We're going to keep it going, and Director Chief John Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for putting this together so we can speak directly to the community on how important this is. We want to get the message out before the crisis occurs. So thank you for putting this together. And thank you to the media for covering this so we can talk to the community and settle their anxiety before the incident occurred. Thank you to the men and women standing behind us, all our partners, the federal, state, and local partners. They're battle tested. We've been through this. Living in New Orleans is just a way of living here in the lower line areas, dealing with storms. We can depend on them. The message you've heard and will continue to hear from our leaders is that we have to depend on them to follow the orders and instructions, be prepared to work as a team, collectively, city, state, local, federal, as well as the community. Be prepared to work as a team, and we will be successful. We have been successful in the past, and we will continue to be successful as long as everybody comes together and work as a team. We understand our mission, and it's very simple. It's to save lives, protect property, and to provide security for all involved. That's what we do, and that's what we need to do, working with you and ensuring that we can accomplish it through the long upcoming hurricane season. We have a great team of local, state, and federal and nonprofit agencies that make this up, and they can only perform when citizens step forward and help us perform our functions. Colin talked about volunteers. We all need to come together and work together as a team and help our neighbors out. We have a large challenge facing us. We have done it before, and we will continue to be successful. We just ask as we come into this hurricane season, and we talked about it only takes one to hit the city. And we saw that through Katrina, we saw that through Ida, we continue to see it through tornadoes, that we have to combine, and communication is key. And that's why we're up here, and we appreciate the media coming out here and allowing us to speak to the community and communicate. And we will continue to communicate throughout the disaster, and we continue to communicate with our public, as Dr. Vegno say, with our independent living as well as our nursing homes, to make sure that everybody knows what the resources are that the city provides, so that we can make sure that everybody gets through the season safe and sound. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Chief. And I'm going to ask Deputy CAO of Infrastructure, Joe Threat. Thank you, Joe.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks to the media for covering all our efforts in the city. Today I'll brief most of the infrastructure groups under my purview. Firstly, I'd like to say that as the city of New Orleans, we're really lucky to have a local FEMA office here. The Louisiana Integrated Recovery Office is here. We have local FEMA reps that we work with daily from the multiple storms we've been through. They stand with us in the EOC with Colin Arnold and his group, and they're there to give us what we need. So all the partners you see around us will be in the EOC functioning. We had a tough time doing Ida when we lost power, but we made it through it. So, it just goes to tell you what type of folks we've got working with us. For parks and parkways, the Forestry Division is sufficiently stocked with necessary equipment ahead of hurricane season. Parkway tree contractors are in place to assist Forestry Division and the department with right-of-way clearing and downed trees post-storm. Department-wide pre-hurricane meetings are set to review staff expectations, roles, and responsibilities. The Department of Sanitation, pre-position emergency debris removal, monitoring contracts ahead of the 2023 hurricane season, and all those contracts are in place. As you remember, during Hurricane Ida, we had a problem with municipal solid waste. And with the help with our FEMA partners and the support of our sanitation department, we were able to overcome, the massive amount of trash and debris that was on the streets. Also, we have Department of Sanitation has made significant progress clearing illegal dumping backlogs in 2023, reducing flooding and projectile risks. Residents should register with NOLA ready to receive alerts and direction regarding debris removal following the event. Safety is paramount. We sent a letter out to all our contractors for good housekeeping. At this time, the city, we're probably 1,000 blocks or more. 10% of the city is under construction. We've got 2,800 blocks under construction right now from either federal, state, or city grants. So we've got a lot of construction debris. We've got a lot of barriers and cones. We sent a letter out yesterday to all our contractors and construction companies to secure the debris, and we'll continue to do that up until the event. Department of Public Works, we're manned with equipment. We're manned with pothole cleaners, manhole cleaners. Our crews are out there now. You probably noticed all the potholes. The vac trucks are out there working every day. I would encourage the residents to go to roadworknola.gov/alerts to get information. That number is 504-658-7623, and we hope for a safe, hurricane season this year. Thank you, everyone.
That's it. Thank you, Joe. And I'm going to ask Director Corbin, Sewage and Water Board, to come forward, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here, allowing us to share and, again, communicate the state of our preparedness at the Sewage and Water Board. I think it's very important to share and remind everyone that our utility provides 3 essential services. I know we tend to focus on flood protection and mitigation, but we also provide drinking water. We do wastewater collection and treatment, and obviously drainage. So we take all those 3 seriously. And our major goal during a dry weather day or a bad weather day is to have uninterrupted service to our community. So that's what drives our decision as we make decisions and prepare for the season. So we're constantly maintaining, repairing, and improving all 3 systems. A couple of things that we've been doing and we continue to do is we have been focusing on our canals. We have about 35 open canals that we've been doing a lot of cleaning, removing any blockage or impediment as to maximize the capacity of those canals. We've been working very closely with key partners like the Flood Authority East, because we have to synchronize our operation during any surge events. That's very, very crucial operation, and communication and sharing information, current information with them is very key, and they've been great partners with us, as well as the Corps of Engineers being involved with the outfall canal pumping stations. Working with Entergy, our partner, is more key than ever. Obviously, everything we do is very active and relies on power, whether it's our own or Entergy, so it's very key to have advanced communication and be prepared to any event that we may face. Specific to wastewater treatment, we've fully recovered from any of the Ida damages that we sustained at the East Bank wastewater treatment plant. We've fortified our backup generator because it sustained damage and rendered the entire plant inoperational during Ida. So that generator has been fortified, and hopefully would reduce, if not eliminate, the chances of damage to that generator. We also added additional generators to allow us to pump any stormwater to avoid any flooding of that facility. Specific to our power, we have ample power capacity that would meet any of our peak demands. We have one generator that's currently out. We refer to it as Turbine 4. Many of you are familiar with that. And that is slated to be back sometime in end of June, early July. And then with that, we would regain about 18 megawatts of power and putting us in a very, very good place relative to powering all our drainage pumps as well as our drinking water pumps. So we're in very, very good standing relative to that. When it comes to pumps, we have 7 pumps that are out of the total of 99 pumps. 2 of them are in the largest pumping station, DPS 6, and those are slated to be coming back. Either one is due back this week, and the other one is within a month. The other ones do not cause us any concern because we do have redundancy in the system, but we are obviously working very hard on bringing all of them back as soon as possible. Relative to drinking water, we have, as many of you know, had refurbished 4 of the 8 potable water pumps, and those obviously are now more reliable. They have a variable speed, allowing us to adjust to any loss of pressure in the system. So that puts us in a very, very good place. 2 are under construction, and we have 2 backups. So we have 6 out of 8 that are available to us. And with all the alternative source of power and the redundancy, we are very confident that we will be able to pump water, drinking water, into the system. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ghassan. And I'm going to ask Ms. Sandra Diggs to come forward. Miller.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor. Thank you for having us here today. And as others have said, thank you all for being here as well to allow us to give the opportunity to speak directly with our customers regarding our preparedness at Entergy. As you know, Entergy New Orleans, we prepare year-round, and we learn and we improve from our previous storm responses. That includes working with our partners, such as Sewage and Water Board, as Director Ghassan indicated, and our city partners that we have with us here today, our local community partners, and to make sure that we're working together through new ideas and rethinking and retooling from previous storm responses. So as we're headed into the 2023 hurricane season, we've taken steps to ensure that employees are ready to respond to another storm if it hits this area. Preparations have included tabletop storm drills involving cross-functional teams across our entire enterprise and our service territory, as well as a 2-day drill held in the field where we simulated a Category 5 hurricane scenarios for our field crews and leaders. We're also implementing new software to assess damage more rapidly and practicing communication techniques to ensure everyone has multiple methods to stay in touch. We'll always be chasing perfection when it comes to storm recovery, but we do know that no system is fail-proof. So resiliency investments are needed to ensure our grid can withstand more frequent and stronger storms. And if the lights go out, we can safely and quickly restore power to the services, to our constituents. We want our customers to know that we understand the importance we play in bringing back normalcy to the communities following a severe weather event. but it's important that we continue to have community conversations to ensure that we're all working together when our communities need us, no matter what the storm. And we'll be speaking directly with our community at the community events, as well as our neighborhood association events, regarding our preparedness, as well as your preparedness as well. Let me end with this. As we head into a hopefully less than active hurricane season, the one thing that we know for sure is our communities will always exemplify what resiliency and unity looks like, no matter what adversity we face.
Sandra, tell them about that improvement to the grid, 150 mph.
Yes, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have our Director of Reliability, Mr. Shelton Hudson, who's here with me on today. He will be the individual that will be leading the restoration should an event hit this area. So I'm going to have him speak directly to
Thank
the
you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, specifically to the transmission structure that, that went down back in Hurricane Ida. We have since replaced that and built it to the new standards that we have in terms of our resiliency plan that we have moving forward. So now the tower that we have now is able to resist winds that get around 150 miles per hour, to which that should be able to withstand and stand this time. So we should be good to go.
Stand and stand. Sounds good to me. Absolutely. Thank you very much. And so we're going to keep it going. I'm going to ask Mr. Toomey Craig, Emergency Management Director, RTA.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning. The RTA appreciates the strong partnership that we have with the City of New Orleans to assist with the city's assisted evacuation plan. We stand ready to assist with emergency transportation for evacuees to the Smoothie King Center this hurricane season. In keeping with changes we implemented last hurricane season, the RTA has integrated the city's existing evacuee spots into its transit system, and we're going to leverage our transit hubs to transport evacuees to the Smoothie King Center. And then we're committed post-storm, as we did during Hurricane Ida, with providing cooling buses should the infrastructure conditions warrant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to keep it going. Kelly Chandler, Regional Director, Flood Protection Authority East.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to first start off by saying thank you to all of our partners. As been said before, communication is key. So I appreciate our coordination with Gasson and the Sewage and Water Board, Colin Arnold and his office, Mayor Cantrell, and the Corps of Engineers. The Flood Protection Authority East operates and maintains the hurricane and storm damage risk reduction system on the east bank of the Mississippi River and the St. Bernard, Jefferson, and Orleans parishes. This system is made up of 192 miles of levee and flood walls, 246 gates that are closed before a storm, and 3 pumping stations that have 17 pumps in them, along with a surge barrier that's 1.8 miles long. We are ready for hurricane season. We have exercised all of our gates and inspected them. We have completed our quarterly and annual inspections of our levees and flood walls. We are confident that the system will perform as was demonstrated in Hurricane Ida. As everybody can remember, there was absolutely no flooding from Hurricane Ida, and we expect that to continue. I want to say that the Corps of Engineers will give you a more in-depth update, but we have completed the inspection and the temporary repairs on all 17 pumps at our pump stations, and they will be ready for hurricane season. I want to make sure that I thank the hundreds of men and women that on a day-to-day basis operate and maintain the system in the New Orleans region. I mentioned earlier that the system is a risk reduction system. That means you cannot eliminate the risk completely. And as been said before, please do your part. Have an evacuation plan, review your insurance, stock up on supplies, and listen to local and state officials to stay weather aware. Get ready now for hurricane season. Don't wait. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And will District Emergency Manager Heath Jones, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. Mayor, thanks for having this event for us. It's key to bring us all together several times during the year to keep these relationships going, the cooperation, the coordination, the communication, everything we need to have a successful response. It all starts in the off seasons and not just in the hurricane season. You heard Kelly say that they operate the Hurricane Storm Damage Risk Reduction System along with SLFBA West, their counterparts on the West Bank. We built that system and we turned it over to our fantastic partners at the flood authorities. They continue to have a aggressive maintenance program on that system. We've done all the inspections on everything, and it's ready to go. So once we built it, we turn it over. They own and operate that system and have no concerns about their operations there. However, as Kelly said, I'll repeat it, there is going to be a hurricane someday that will overtop that system. 2 years ago, I stand at this podium and we talked about Ida potentially overtopping the system on the West Bank. So just know that it is a risk reduction system. It is designed to a 100-year level protection, which means 1% chance of happening any given year. But it is not a full protection system. It can be overtopped by a storm large enough, and someday that will happen. We continue to work on the Sealer project. That's our rainfall mitigation projects in the city. We completed the uptown portions of that last year, but we all continue on the West Bank along General de Gaulle and continue to provide that risk reduction from rainfall during an event. That is designed to a 10-year rainfall event. As we turn over the system, it's also, again, important to remember we can't eliminate all the risk. Do your personal planning, get a plan, get flood insurance, get your go bags, just as everybody else has said. I'm just the last one to say it, but those points are so important. Be prepared for yourself. Let the system protect your home. If officials call for an evacuation, heed that advice. If the system is projected to overtop, the National Weather Service will put out a storm surge warning inside the levied area, as what happened with Ida on the West Bank. So that's your indication that the federal partners are projecting an overtopping of that hurricane system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We also have, of course, public safety leadership standing in that will answer any questions that you all may have. One of the things that we know as it relates to contraflow, we're looking at hour 72 or greater before enacting that. What we've seen just from experience, we don't have that most oftentimes. And so don't wait for a contraflow in order to prepare yourselves as well as to evacuate in terms of voluntary and, of course, heed all warnings coming from the city of New Orleans. What I will also encourage everyone, now we're almost 300,000 in terms of residents that are signed up for NOLA Ready alerts, but we're always encouraging more to register. So you text NOLA Ready, one word, 77295. Very important. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, John, and then we'll go through Q&A.
Any questions? The advocate in the inbox seat.
Can you talk about mandatory evacuations, how long you need, what the conditions might be for calling one, and how that might work procedurally?
Sure. So mandatory evacuations in terms of that, in terms of looking at that storm, but in terms of that contraflow, again, it's that hour 72 or greater. And what we've seen just through history recent, we don't have that time. It really has had us focusing on a post-storm evacuation process as well, which we are absolutely prepared to enact. I'm going to ask Colin to come up and just walk you through some other. Thank you.
So the traditional city-assisted evacuation, where pre-storm, we open up RTA, we run buses to the Smoothie King Center. From there, the state and the federal government assist us with both motor coach, Amtrak, and airlines. That all starts around 96 hours. We have not had that type of notice, pre-notice on a storm in quite some time. It was built on the idea of it was built off of Hurricane Gustav, which came across the Atlantic, tracked us the entire time towards New Orleans, came up in intensity at a measured rate, and really had, a week or more in there to look at these things. We're just not seeing that with storms, particularly ones in the Caribbean and the Gulf. Realistically, we would need to make a call for a mandatory evacuation at about H-66 hours. I think that's the furthest we've been able to bring it in. So really, like the mayor said, a lot of our focus now, particularly post-Ida, is both on the challenges of longer-term power outages, which we hope some of the improvements obviously made post-Ida will benefit us as far as transmission lines with Entergy, and then also capacity that we've built on, different NORD facilities, the convention center, libraries. We have the ability to bring in generators and put power on these buildings in case we need them for areas like shelters post-storm, disaster resource centers, and the like. But really the challenge is, as Jen talked about, and this is kind of wrapping all of this up, which is when you have essentially elderly and vulnerable folks living in apartments, and like she said, we're not talking about nursing homes. There's no care there. It's an apartment building. And what we've endeavored to do is to take the resources that we have on the limited timeline, and I'm talking from about 48 hours out from the storm is where we're at right now, would be the minimum time that we would have to put something together that could realistically make an impact, particularly on those vulnerable populations, and triaging those vulnerable populations, knowing where they're at, knowing the ones that we need to move as many as we can out of town, storm passes, and then we come back in with a post-storm package. And I think that's the future. It's challenging. We have the capability to do much of this right now, we believe, based off of what we know from the traditional city-assisted evacuation. But I think what it really speaks to, though, and you've heard it several times up here, is that now more than ever, folks need to have a plan. Those that are capable of doing this on their own, they need to, because the resources that are needed to do this heavily rely on those that can self-evacuate and those that can take care of a family member, a friend, or a neighbor. And I'm really encouraging and really pleading for people to do that and to know their neighbor, know their family, and bring those people together in the fold to try and evacuate. And as the mayor said, we've heard from the state numerous times, do not rely on contraflow as your trigger to evacuate. We've heard this several times from the community. It's very concerning because it was never designed to be that way. How it got into that area, not sure, but with 72 hours needed to coordinate between two states, Mississippi and Louisiana, and all of those resources, I don't see contraflow working in an environment where you have a storm like Ida, which I think is kind of the typical storm that we're going to see. If we have a storm that tracks all the way across the Atlantic, like Gustav, we can go to our plans that have been set for a decade, move people out of the city, use the assistance of the federal and state governments to help us with sheltering and moving people. But other than that, for those first 72 hours after a storm and getting ready, we're going to be in a significant disadvantage as far as the entire population of the city. What we need to do is focus on the vulnerable populations, those that are most affected by the loss of power, whether it's medical equipment or from heat-related illness. And that's where we want to be right now.
Thank you.
Why would it not work for a storm like Ida? And you mentioned realistically you would call for an evacuation of H minus 66 hours. What sort of storm are you talking about for that realistic evacuation scenario?
Something that generates off of the coast of Africa, the Cape Verde Islands, comes across the Atlantic, tracks up into the Gulf of Mexico, and gives us that look. And you've seen the National Weather Service is going to a 7-day outlook now. And I think, I know that discussions that are had both, from the Weather Service and from our regional and state partners is you may see a decision regarding telling people to evacuate earlier. The problem we've always had is that, and the problem with Ida, to get to your question, is by the time we need to make the decisions that need to be made to try and move everyone out of here as far as a mandatory evacuation, that wasn't even a tropical depression. Okay? It was still 3 days away from being anything. And so you are taking it on the forecast and on a little bit of faith. unfortunately, faith that this is actually, you're making a decision that is going to impact people financially. It's going to put people under stress. It is a heck of a decision to make for something that is a tropical depression that may impact your area in 3 days. That being said, I think that by focusing on the population, vulnerable population, seniors, those with functional access needs, by focusing on them, we are eliminating a lot of that life safety issue that may occur from a hurricane or the aftermath of a hurricane.
On that track you mentioned, are you looking for a specific category storm to call for evacuation, 66 hours?
Our policy's always been Cat 3 and above. We're really looking at mandatory evacuation. However, the Saffir-Simpson scale doesn't really take into account storm surge. It doesn't take into account a whole lot of other things. It's pretty much wind speed. And so we've seen a Category 4 storm, Ida, come over this city and come over this area, and the damage that it can do just 20 miles to the west of us. We were fortunate during Ida in the city, and I think that anybody who lives in Jefferson Parish, St. Charles, and Kenner would agree with us on that. So wind is important, but for us, obviously in New Orleans, it's the water. It's either the wind-driven water or it's the rainfall. And so we have to basically judge every storm on its own merit.
You mentioned a post-storm package and the focus on post-storm planning. Can you walk us through what that post-storm package is?
It's really, a lot of our concern is with the transportation aspect of this, because as a city, we're relying on transportation assets that are not our own. We have an incredible partner, where is he, with RTA, that can get the folks where we need them to be within the city. But then there's this challenge, and the state of Louisiana and our federal government has risen to that challenge over the years in planning with us as partners to provide up to 800 motor coach buses, to provide civilian and military charter aircraft. Amtrak has worked with us as a city to provide whatever they have in their rail yard on the day that it needs to happen. They'll move people north of here, north of I-12, which then we can connect them with buses and move them further on. But the problem with that is those contracts, in order to get all those assets here, that's why you're seeing 96, 84, 72 hours. It takes 4 or 5 days for those things to come together. And so that's where our challenge is. Where do we come together as a city, able to use the assets we have and whatever we can, on a real quick timeline, get from the state as far as buses and from resources from the federal government, how can we put those together? And that's what the post-storm ideal is. The post-storm idea is that, the plan is that once the storm passes and we have 24, 36 hours, a lot of those resources that maybe were ordered in haste without the proper timeline to get done before the storm will be available to us after the storm, and we can immediately move in and do that. And I believe that is a reasonable plan to have given the timelines of the storms that we've had.
And factoring in and pulling in Louisiana National Guard and all.
I mean, yeah, it's a huge lift.
It's a huge lift, and even lessons learned from Ida. Well, we do have now an internal post-emergency task force for us to go out in the field in real time to make those assessments. And also just being very honest about heat, that we experienced during Ida as well, heat advisory and hurricane. John.
We're going to end things here. I will make whoever available for y'all individually after, but we have to end things here. So thank y'all so much.
Thank you very much. Oh, yes, ma'am. How are you?
Good. I called out one guy running for governor who was talking about he's going to take care of, he's going to change things. He called out New Orleans and he showed your face and he showed Jason's face.